Welcome everybody. I moved over to our first slide just to kind of cover the topics we'll be talking about today. So we did our little welcome and introductions, which is great. I'll do just a quick couple housekeeping notes too. So Amanda will be helping me monitor the chat. So if you have any questions or comments or something super piques your interest, drop it in the chat and Amanda will help us kind of go through those if we need, and we will have a Q&A later in the webinar as well. So anything that's, spikes your interest, drop in the chat and we'll get to that later. We'll also be muting people just so that we don't have a ton of background noise. And if you do want to jump in or have something to add, drop in the chat and Amanda will make sure she flags my attention. And let's get started. So the topics we're obviously covering are, the art of connecting your personal and professional brands. And like we've all kind of mentioned in our intros, there is a lot of crossover. Whether you're a solopreneur, as we call them, you are a small business, or you're an individual contributor in a bigger company or a corporate setting. So there is a lot of crossover. And now with social media and working from home, we kind of struggle sometimes to keep those separate, and we want to just really dive into that. So we'll go through why does it matter, real world examples, and then we'll have some final thoughts and takeaways. And we're really excited you're here. So we'll just keep going. So we've introduced ourselves a little bit. This is me, I'm the moderator. My name is Jill. I work here at Kaleidoscope, and I'm actually coming up on my 1 year, which I realized recently, which is very exciting. So there's a little bit about me there. I have almost full decade of digital strategy, social media marketing under my belt. And I've also tended to have a couple jobs at once. So there's a lot with that personal and professional blending too for me. And then for here at KMG, or Kaleidoscope Management Group, we like to call ourselves a team of problem solvers, marketers, brainstormers. We're kind of everything. And I love the name Kaleidoscope because it comes from kind of a flock of butterflies. When you all fly in harmony, you create something beautiful. So I love that. And our new slogan that we're really working towards that we think is coming across with a lot of our clients is that we offer marketing you can take to the bank. So we're really excited you're here. And we'll just dive into some of our topics. So we're going to address why it matters to look at the difference and the crossover between your personal and professional brands. And a couple of the key points we saw while we were doing some research for this and just having our dialogue behind the scenes was a few of these topics right here in blue. And the first one is that authenticity is super attractive. And you'll see that we do a lot of alliteration here, which I know Bertie made a joke with me recently about. We found a really cool stat that 86% of consumers or your customers say that authenticity is a key factor when deciding what brand they support. So they want to be able to relate to you. They want to be able to feel like you're representing them, and that's what's going to keep bringing them back. One real world example that I support, and I know that Tucker on our team also supports, is a company called Atomic Gold. They do no photo retouching in any of their work, and they offer really inclusive sizes. So those customers are going to keep coming back because they make quality work while also representing what we feel as ourselves, because we're going to see no retouched photos and people who look like us. So authenticity is super key. And then that kind of leads into our next point, which is loyalty drives demand. And how we look at that is a loyal customer is 5 times more likely to purchase again from you, and then also 4 times more likely to refer a friend to the company. And we've kind of been joking that these customers that are loyal are like a gold mine. They're going to keep coming back. They're going to keep bringing more quality and more work for you and more revenue, which is really important. And then kind of how you tie all that together and how you get to those points is through your actual workforce. So when you elevate your employee engagement and make sure that your employees feel invested in the company and that they are represented as well and that their authentic selves can come to work, you're going to have a ton more engagement, which creates just better work overall. And I found a pretty cool stat in one of the articles that we have referenced in our last slide for resources, that if your employee, well, it's not less, more of like an opinion versus a stat, but I feel like it's a stat to me that if your employees only bring 50% of their personal selves to work, you cannot expect 100% work out of them, because they need to feel invested and involved. So I really, really love that. And one quote that I did find was, bringing your whole self drives innovation and well-being, and your company won't move forward unless there's innovation. So I thought that was a really good point made by Great Place to Work, which is actually a really good online resource for a lot of the things we're talking about today. And then we're going to dive a little bit further into why does it matter. So we have a couple slides called why does it matter, because it is important. We need to figure out why it matters. And we kind of have an idea, but we're not totally sure all the time. But one thing I saw that stuck out to me was that we're hardwired for connection. And we've had some conversations, even just on our team meeting prior to the webinar, about how do we connect when we're so isolated? Are we doing one-on-one Zooms? Are we doing one-on-one calls? And how can we infuse that into our work relationships and our client relationships? And I love this phrase that humans are hardwired for connection, because I really just feel that it's like a visceral, authentic thing that we're going to talk about today too, but also live in our personal lives and professional lives. And tying those two topics of authenticity and loyalty together is that when you are authentic, you create that loyalty that we talked a little bit about, with those customers being more likely to buy from you and refer friends. And we found some, I call them sexy stats. So forgive the, forgive the sexy comment, but I think it's super sexy that 91% of your consumers are going to reward you if they feel like you are authentic. And that's with that more purchases, more referrals. And that leads into them coming back again, which is 62% would return and purchase more from you. And one thing I just loved, I include all these puppies because I've got 3 at home. I know you all have lots of dogs too, is that I really want to dig into these topics and like really address why they're important and why do they matter. And one of those loyalty parts that I noticed too was a HubSpot quote that I found was that 81% of customers are going to trust the recommendations from their family and friends, which I don't know if you purchased first, Tucker, I purchased first, but that Atomic Gold reference earlier, we just go back and forth. She'll be like, look at these new rings I bought. And I'm like, okay, well, these earrings I wear every day are from them. And then we share about it. And, we just keep producing more revenue for them because they're a company we feel really invested in. So that is slide number 2 for why does it matter. And with number 3, we have a couple more of those high key points that we boiled down to while we were preparing for this webinar. And your people are your power, celebrate and support individuality, and then encourage and foster strengths. And that's something I talked with Cabiny about, that we are utilizing a professional and work coach for KMG team members for the next several weeks. And I've already seen a ton of success with this because it's encouraging me and fostering my strengths. And so I want to dig a little into this, and some notes that I took are that your people are your power, and that goes into that employee engagement. And we want to encourage people to be individuals at their jobs so they can bring them their full selves and bring that 100% workforce to work every day. And an example of encouraging that individuality and fostering those strengths that I talked with Cabiny about is that a lot of people know that I am a DJ outside of my 9 to 5, which unfortunately is not a very poppin' job right now because of COVID. But when we were before the before times of COVID, I was DJing 2 to 3 times a month outside of my 9 to 5. But there was something about that really I noticed that I could bring to my work, which was, if I'm DJing at a bar and it's late and I pick a song that no one responds to, I have to be able to pivot really quickly and say, okay, how can I bring people back on the dance floor? And I bring that strength to my work, hopefully every day, by saying, if this path that we took with a client isn't working, or this strategy kind of needs a little bit of massaging, how can we change that up really quickly to find those better results? So if you know you're really good at something in your personal life or in a side gig, bring that to your job. Talk about it with your boss, bring it to your work coach, and see how you can really build that up, because it will make you feel better at work and work harder. And I find that every day with some of those strengths that I bring. So moving on from that, we have a couple real world examples, and I told Tucker that she would be seeing some Dolly, and we love Dolly at KMG. If you know anything about us, she is on our playlists, and we look to her for inspiration in addition to those good tunes that we listen to. I feel like she's a perfect example of someone who has leaned into her personality, and she's been around for over 50 years professionally. But personally, she really kind of tackles those questions that people might ask her ahead of time. And she really likes to listen to her you could call them clients, or her customers, or her listeners, and try and pivot to make sure that they feel that she is authentic and authentically listening to them one big thing that she did recently was remove the term Dixie from her show in Branson, which I found kind of exciting and fascinating, that she said, okay, well, this is a term that has historical references that we want to move away from and be really inclusive for everyone. So now I think it's called just Dolly Stampede, but it showcases that someone as big as her and as someone who has a huge following is willing to take those chances and be authentic. And, you know, we're going to keep following her till, I don't know, I'll be listening to her for years, pretty much until I've been around for 50 years too. So that's one of our big do's and an example of a real world kind of meshing those personalities between professional and personal. And another one we saw when we were brainstorming was REI. And REI, we all kind of love. If you're an outdoorsy person like me and love getting outside, you've probably used their hashtag, which is opt outside, but it actually only started about 5 years ago. And it was a branding and kind of professional, personal push to get their customers to go outside on Black Friday. So they close their stores down on Black Friday and they're no longer open. And they want to make sure that their employees get outside. So I know that they do trainings, they do events for their employees on Black Friday. And then they try to bring in their customer base and give them this hashtag to use. So it's really cool to see that people use it, not only on Black Friday, but also outside of that. And, you know, I've used it just on regular trips, and it's cool because then you can connect with everyone. So I thought it was a really great example of bringing a big personality for the professional side of things and bringing in the personal side for your employees and your customers. And we actually had an interesting time trying to find some don'ts, because a lot of the don'ts you find are going to be like really wild marketing mishaps or misunderstanding, or someone didn't change the language correctly when they went into a new market. But I found one recently with EA Games. So this is kind of a loose reference, but I thought it kind of worked all to bring everything together. EA Games is a titan in the video game creation industry. So they create, produce, market these video games, and they've been around forever. I played them growing up. I'm sure I still have a couple of them downstairs, but they're really well known and everyone trusted them. Everyone trusted them to produce big games. But then what they started doing is taking out all their smaller competitor shops, which was removing new games from this, you know, the system and from folks who might really enjoy them, and shut down those shops and then absorb them. And it became really controversial because they weren't producing quality work anymore. So customers couldn't trust them. We felt kind of let down by them to say they eliminated this shop that about a game I was really excited about. So they're kind of one that I found really interesting. I want to look more into this about who they absorbed, and the video game industry is just very interesting in general. But then the other one that a lot of people probably heard about was Roseanne Barr. And I didn't actually start watching her show until a few years ago. And then her kind of incident happened where she had a racist tweet go out pretty late at night one night, and they pulled her show immediately. And then they resurrected her show without her. And that was a really interesting example of how do you handle social media as a huge personality? Your professional life and your personal life kind of blend together when you are a celebrity, just in general. Once you have a following, you have to be careful and you have to really understand what you're saying has an impact. And it was fascinating to see her kind of, you know, castle fall with her inside of it because of this unfortunate tweet she made, and even apologizing took a while for her to gain some more trust with people. So that's an example of kind of those blurred lines, and we'll reference those a little bit in one of our next slides too. So kind of tying this all together, we have a couple final thoughts and takeaways. And I love this little comment that Cabiny added to our fossil. A fossil leaves an imprint for the rest of time. And that ties in this concept of first impressions. First impressions, you know, they say take 3 seconds, but then people are going to remember how you made them feel right away. And so that's it's something I really try and keep in mind now when I post something to social media or I'm bringing myself to work. And that ties into one of our topics of use good judgment. If a current or future employer or client of my dreams were to see this post, would it help or hurt my reputation or theirs? Which kind of harkens back to that Roseanne incident. You know, her employers technically are the sitcoms, the TV shows, the whole industry in general. And if you really are trying to voice an opinion that you're not so certain might go over well, or maybe you have a little feeling inside that maybe isn't the the best for public eye, keep it private. There's close friends options on Instagram, things like that. So if you want to share something, kind of ask yourself, does this go on LinkedIn? Does this go on TikTok? And then utilize those channels to really bolster your personality online. And then knowing the guidelines, that's something I think that applies for both small businesses, large businesses, you as a consultant somewhere. Ask your employer what their guidelines and policies are. Look at their handbook. That's something that I've experienced in my personal life and professional life, saying is if I'm also a side gig, if I had a side gig of being an influencer or a blogger, if posting during my 9 to 5 hours is acceptable, can I talk about that with my boss, or should I just completely keep it off the table? And it's, knowing the policies and knowing the guidelines and then implementing them with how you feel is best. That will represent you as whatever that side gig is and your employer. Super important to think about. And then for the employer side of things, if you are the owner of a small business or you have a team under you, make sure you talk about those policies with your employees and say, I understand that you're going to take a lunch break between these hours or somewhere in this zone. Since we're in COVID, we're all working remotely. That's when I would expect you to maybe be on, Instagram, popping off on some stories or sharing some things, and then trust that your employees are taking that to heart. And if you see them maybe taking a walk at 3 p.m. and posting about the fall leaves, just know that maybe that was for their mental health. And then maybe you can do it too. And kind of just have those really engaging conversations, and that will build trust. And then the authenticity and loyalty with your team, which I think is a really good thing for everyone to explore right now. And that kind of also leads into transparency and trust, which I just mentioned. That's with like what I just mentioned, having that trust between your employers and your employees is super vital, but it also fosters that with your consumers if you are a large brand. Knowing when they're online and knowing what they're expecting to see from you is really important, and leveraging that. And then say you are on a team that is part of a huge, huge brand, or maybe is something that everyone is looking to, like a TV show, or you are a celebrity. How can you leverage your personal accounts to also foster interest in that company that you're representing? So, I've been sharing about this webinar to my personal accounts, but also trying to make sure I tag KMG so that we can kind of share and go around. And so if I'm doing that during work hours, Cabiny and the team can trust that I'm doing that to foster my relationship as a personal person for a professional company, and kind of just really blending that all together and making sure that the friends that I see online who might have joined this webinar or who will see this later will say, oh, okay, I saw Jill post about this, I saw her tag the company, and they can learn more about both of us that way. So that kind of covers all the big topics. I kind of breezed through that. So we did have some time left. We were aiming for about a 45-minute total webinar. So it's almost exactly 11:30, which is perfect because it leaves us time to do Q&A and just kind of have some discussions and talk about any of those topics and answer questions if you have them. And I wanted to put this little quote up here from an American writer that I was not familiar with, but I really want to look into, Cynthia Ozick. I'm hopefully pronouncing her last name correctly, but she said at one point that you are your brand and it's up to you to manage it. And I think that is something I'd like to let everyone kind of have sink in as we do our Q&A and then go from here, because you personally represent your brand, you personally represent your company, and then how can you bring that to your workplace, whether it's big or small. So I appreciate everyone for coming and listening. And I don't know if Amanda has seen any questions in the chat. Okay, she's nodding.
Yeah, so we have a question here. How are you blending politics into your business and then also your personal brand? So that was a question we had.
So that's actually something that Cabiny and I had talked a little bit about while we were doing the final touches on the webinar slideshow. Is I have heard that Dolly Parton, for instance, never talks politics. You could ask her who she's voting for, what she's doing, and she'll never talk politics, but she takes actions that show her values and the ethics and the morals she supports. So for me personally, I might share something personal in my channels about, how I feel about what's going on in the real world, but I would never, ever share that on a professional account unless it were to ever be talked about with my boss or with Cabiny or with the whole team. Especially in a corporate setting, of course, you want to make sure that if someone if your company might be looking at your channels, keep that in mind. And one thing I have seen people do is on their Twitter bios or Instagram bios, they'll put a little mention that says all thoughts or opinions are my own and do not represent my company, or whatever, they, similar language like that. I think that's a good way to keep them separate, to protect yourselves and to protect your company. But I think it's kind of up to you about what is important to you to share. If it's really important for you to say, vote this way or vote that way, then you should be able to share that. But maybe make that private for just your friends, or keep it on a separate account if you think that it might go against what your company represents, if that makes sense.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jill. The next question is from Cabiny, and she asked us, what's the greatest challenge for a solopreneur to create a breakthrough brand?
Ooh, I feel like that could be a big discussion topic. I think one thing I saw when I was doing some research for this is that you want to do something unique and new, which can feel like a challenge because it feels like everyone else has done something before, but we have the power of Google. So, if you're coming up with a new slogan, or maybe you're looking at a logo, you can use image reverse search, which is something that Google offers. So you design something or you have a photo you'd like to use, you can image reverse it or search it in reverse to see if it's ever appeared somewhere before, which would help kind of with your branding and breakthrough. But I'd love to hear if anyone else has some suggestions or had experience in like kind of performing that breakthrough, if anyone else has something to offer.
Ellen, I know just personally because of seeing your journey, how much you've jumped onto the social media scene. And I just feel like you've done such a great job of it. What would you say for solopreneurs? What maybe one of the challenges was, or like a big aha for bringing a brand online from scratch, basically?
Yeah, I got a lot of challenges to pick from. So it's a big task what we're all trying to do, which is communicate through these channels that, so I'd say the greatest challenge is trying to adjust to communicating authenticity fast and furious, right? Like, I mean, this is the motion of Instagram. It's fast, or LinkedIn and all of these portals, if you will. I kind of think of them as portals to you, and they're small, they're narrow, and they're challenging to. So this idea of authentically expressing yourself, but quickly and clearly. And so that's probably the biggest challenge because yeah, we have a lot to say. And I guess I'd be curious if others have this experience, or when we're talking about bringing the personal in, is how do we do that in sort of these soundbite ways? Like, I've been working with the idea of storytelling and beginning to try to weave a bit more of a story into what I'm trying to say, market and offer to the world, and weaving that together. That's my current response to my challenge, if you will.
I think that's a great question. And I think you're doing a nice job of storytelling without selling. And I think to me, that would be what I would point to as one of the greatest challenges we see with new business owners. They're doing social media to drive revenue and to drive business. But in order to do that, you actually have to take a very broad brush view. So you may not necessarily see that conversion. Like if I were to say, did you get clients from it? It's a little bit softer in the beginning, but I hope that for a lot of business owners over time, you start to get into a rhythm where that 1,000-person following or that 2,000-person following isn't just a vanity project. It's actually because you have identified clear goals to use it for business. So I think that's one of the hardest things, because you can spend a ton of time on it and never see business from it. And that's just a big waste of time, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
I love this.
Your point of authenticity and loyalty, I just wanted to say, is just, yeah, huge with that.
And I like what you said about the storytelling. I think that's something that we might forget can last longer than one post or one image or one channel. I think that's going to be a big takeaway for me too, is just remember, well, if we're talking about something in 1 week, how can we reference that in the future? A lot of people think of those as campaigns, which makes it sound not so exciting, but if you think of it more as storytelling, what is your company or what is this product trying to tell as a story? And how can you bring that together from channel to channel and from post to post? So I think I'm going to really think about that for both my personal posts and professional side of things.
Jill, I was just going to say, I feel like that we're just barely scratching the surface here, and we could have, like, God, 4 offshoots of this webinar where it's drilled down to branding for solopreneurs, branding for folks like me who have their own mini business inside a global firm, because there's some tension there. And also maybe for yet another one for folks who are living in a professional world that is dominated by someone who looks very different, whether that's male or a different ethnicity or a different age group, you know. I might be, you know, splitting hairs here, but I really feel like there's enough meat to cover these different topics, you know. So yeah, I would love to hear more if we do more programming.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same trouble when we were trying to make this slideshow and cover all our topics. I said this could be like 20 slides long, this could be 2 hours long, and I do love that. So I mean, either we'll do it or maybe we could collaborate. I feel like a collaboration could brew on that. But yeah, I love that idea. There's so many more topics, so much meat that's missing from conversations about those. You said that there's tension. I don't know if you'd be comfortable sharing maybe just an example of some of the tension you've experienced in your situation?
Oh, sure. So in the financial services industry, being predominantly male and, you know, probably you're thinking like maybe a 50-year-old Caucasian male-ish. I'm clearly Caucasian, so that wasn't a hurdle, but I started at age 23, so I was pretty young. And of course, being a woman. And for a long time there, I did what a lot of us do, and especially people of color do, is you play a role, you know, like, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to dress like, have my hair, literally everything, right? And how I'm supposed to comport myself and all that. And the funny thing is it wasn't until, I mean, maybe 13 years into being a financial planner that I started to really, and it was only by dumb luck. It wasn't like I had a light bulb go off or I attended some amazing symposium or whatever, you know, that showed me the light, that I started to network in female professional groups. So I was around other women instead of being in co-ed or predominantly male groups. And right away, I think my guard kind of came down and I could be more authentic, even though I wasn't aware that I was doing that. It was all very subconscious. And then as I started forming relationships with some of these people, and I could tell that they actually liked me, I could be more and more natural. And then I just became, and obviously I'm not the same as I am, you know, we all have a professional veneer that I have no problem maintaining, you know, that we, like right now, I don't have curlers in my hair, right? Like there is some kind of professional veneer that I want to maintain, but that you could really, the more I started being myself, the more I was making better connections and actually growing my business more with the kind of clients who really get me and really like what is most Vicky. So anyway, that's kind of a long answer, but but you know, I just think about how many years were wasted where I was spinning my wheels and still growing, but not the same and not necessarily attracting those people that I really got them and they really got me. So
yeah,
I'd love to have other
natural as a synonym for authentic. You said you didn't feel, the more natural you felt, the more authentic you felt, the more the natural, you know, connections became, the networking, and then the client. Yeah.
Jill, we have a couple more questions. I want to make sure that we get to as many as we can. And then any questions that we don't answer, we can do a follow-up, just allowing Jill to address some of the questions via email. So we'll make sure that anyone that was on the webinar to follow up for questions we don't get to. But it looks like Newport Donna, did you have a question? Oh, wait, I think you're on mute. Donna, I think you might be on, there you go.
Okay. It's not a question, but it's a comment. It's a yardstick that I believe is helpful that I use in the determining how much or if to share part of my personal life, my personal opinions, etc., publicly, professionally. And that is this quote, not original with me, that people will not long remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel.
Mm.
That's beautiful.
I think that's Maya Angelou.
So beautiful.
So I think that's an excellent yardstick in determining whether you're going to say spout off what you're going to say and how you're going to say it and what is appropriate for your professional life versus your personal life.
Yeah, that's a great rule of thumb. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a nice segue. Jill, we have a question in the chat that says, I'm struggling with the fact that I used to use social media personally and want to move them to public. How much personal info should be edited out? For example, I'm thinking I don't want to show pictures of my nieces and nephews if my pages are public. I think this is an excellent question that even people in the business that might be familiar with the channels. What do you recommend, Jill?
I think that's a great question. I know that there has been a big move towards keeping children off of social media just to help protect their identities, and eventually they can decide what they would like to share about their lives. I think it kind of just bleeds into that question of what do you feel is authentic to you? If you might be attracting people who are going to work well with you, would they maybe want to know that you are family oriented? So maybe keeping a few of those photos or looking at them in terms of curation, and we call it curating the feed. If you're looking at your feed and there's a few and maybe one is gorgeous but it's black and white and everything else is in color, maybe take the black and white one out and then keep maybe one that is your whole family. Or maybe if you're not comfortable with their faces being shown, if there's one of them, maybe I'm thinking fall, everything is fall in my brain. If you're at the pumpkin patch or at the apple picking orchard, if they're just reaching for an apple, maybe include that. But if you want to keep them there, maybe if it's possible, you could edit the caption too to kind of blend in that professional side of things. If there's some way to kind of take it to a professional level of making that caption fit more with whatever that professional personality is. But I do know a lot of people have gone back through and deleted a lot of things. There's also the option of just creating a new account if you're comfortable and you have the time. And that way you could try and transition some of those professional follows over to there. And I have seen people tag in their bio on Instagram, for example, personal account, and then says like professional account, professional IG, artist IG, and then a link to that. So then people can go take a look at that and follow it as well. So there's a couple different options. And I think it really comes down to how you feel using that yardstick. How does it make you feel? How do you feel like your consumers might feel as well seeing it?
What industry are you in, Emily? That's a great answer, Jill. And I'm curious now if Emily would share what industry you're in.
Yeah, I work in marketing, which is why I would like to be able to use my social media platforms on a more public scale and be able to talk about the industries and kind of ideas that are interesting to me. But having previously used them for personal use and they were private accounts, like I'd love to transition that. And I just feel like there's like a really smart way to do it where, essentially my Facebook account has been active since college. Like I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that could be edited out from that point in time. But in general, when I'm curating content for going forward, I'm kind of trying to find what that balance is of personal, professional.
It's
Well,
a
I
great
think too, we've worked with someone in St. Louis who does a lot of really great quick video tips. And, if maybe you've done video before, or maybe you just do photos of yourself, I know that, faces, especially selfies, do really well in the algorithm. So maybe if you're trying to move into that professional side of things or share your marketing tips, maybe continuing to focus on photos of you or maybe your workspace and start to really kind of move that into the marketing side of things. But if people are expecting to see your face in your account, kind of just try and beef that up and use that to your advantage and just say like, I don't know, I've seen really cute ones where people are doing like the face, face, and then it's like, did you know? And then it's marketing. And you kind of drop like a tidbit in there. Yeah.
Jill, we're at time. I hate to cut us, but I know people have places to go and people to see. Do you want to just do a quick wrap? And then we've copied the questions that we didn't get to from the chat, and we will do a follow-up email with your wisdom in the context of these questions.
Awesome. Yeah, we just want to say a quick thanks for everyone coming and joining the conversation. Makes me feel really good, and I really love connecting with people. I think this was a really successful webinar with everyone. So we included some information. We'd love to connect with you on social media. You can find all of our accounts right here. It's always very similar with our full name for the company, Kaleidoscope Management Group. And then if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can join up our email marketing list, which you probably are already on because you're in the webinar. But we do send out monthly newsletters with industry news, some personal updates from the team, thoughts and opinions, which is really great. And we'll be sending out a link, I believe, to a copy of this so you can see more. We have all of our resources cited in here too. So if you wanted to see more about those stats or any of those references we made, we'll have resources for you. And I really like this idea of following up with other questions. Maybe I could do more videos, Kavani, and do some answers. Yeah.
I'm in favor. I'm totally in
hope so.
favor. And thank you, everyone. I know time is precious and everybody's Zoom fatigued. So thanks so much for sharing some of your day with us. And Jill, I'm so grateful. I learned a lot and can't wait for the series. Vicki, thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day and a great upcoming weekend. And we will connect soon on social media and over email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.